This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're checking in with the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families to talk about their agenda here in Albany, including their reaction to Governor Kathy Hochul's priorities for 2026. And we're joined in the studio by Felicia Singh, Director of Policy and Government Relations for the Coalition. Thanks for making the time, Felicia.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, for starters, I'm curious how your group's priorities or outlook, coming from an Asian American perspective, might be different or have overlap with, say, a general advocacy campaign for children and families in New York.
So Asian Americans comprise of over 2 million people in New York. And what's really critical about that statistic or that data is that we aren't usually seen as a community that has needs in regards to social services or public benefits. A lot of the times we're shooed into the box of being a model minority, whether it's because we might be stereotypically communities that are doing quote unquote well in school, or are communities that are doctors and lawyers and engineers, all of these stereotypes that actually perpetuate us into a box that doesn't recognize the fact that 1 in 4 seniors that are Asian live in poverty, or the fact that mental health is one of the highest. We have one of the highest statistics of mental health issues in communities in New York, and so we created something called the API Equity Budget. And that helps fund critical needs across New York through our wonderful community-based organizations.
And so what does equity mean in this context to you?
Well, to me, it's very different from equality. Equality means that everyone gets the same thing, the same amount, or the same service. Equity is giving communities what they need based on their specific struggles. So, for example, API community has, like I said, one of the highest needs of mental health services in New York. And one of the things that we want to make sure that the equity budget does is fund programs that do exactly that. Target our community and make sure that we're doing programs that support mental health needs, that support community safety, especially considering that post 9/11 and post COVID, we've seen a rise in anti-Asian, anti-Sikh, and Islamophobia across New York.
So in terms of realizing equity, what does that look like in practice? Does it mean putting in language into programs to ensure that there are people of the Asian American population who are benefiting? Is it broader than that, and then you can still capture this population? What does that look like, and are there examples of areas in the budget where you think either the state does a good job or doesn't do a good job in promoting equity?
So what's historic about this budget line is that it's the first of its kind that specifically targets the API community through our community-based organizations. And the first iteration of this funding was in 2022 with $20 million to the community, to CBOs. And then it's gone up since then from 2022 to 2025 when we got $30 million. We've had $30 million allocated in the state budget for the last 3 years, which might sound like a lot, but it's actually like a tiny speck in the state budget considering it's billions of dollars. So we're even just trying to get a parity of investment for our communities in the state budget as a first step. Now, when we look at how that funding is distributed across the state, what we're trying to do next and now and continue to do since the iteration of this funding is target a couple of different kinds of programs where CBOs shared their project need.
And those are what, community organizations?
Exactly, community organizations. So multi-social services, healing focused and community empowerment, cultivation of safety in community, and like I shared, mental health and mental well-being are 4 of our top programs that are requested to be executed through this funding. So it targets either our youth, our seniors across New York, or just API New Yorkers and communities to provide either social services or talk about anti-Asian hate, provide those direct services. So if you've experienced hate in your community, you have someone or a trusted community partner that you can go to talk about it, to report it. And then also all of the services provided by our community-based organizations are done in language, which I think is a lot different. And this is to your point when you're talking about equity, where our CBOs know exactly the kinds of languages their communities speak. Services are actually done in over 13 different languages, from Bangla to Punjabi to Mandarin. I mean, all different types of languages across New York. And that's different from how our government serves our communities. Sometimes people find community-based organizations to actually be more trusted partners than our government, especially right now at the state of fear, where maybe going outside if you're undocumented or have a different status in your family might be a risk. So the community-based organization help provides that equity, what that community member needs right now if they can't go to a government service.
Thinking about the history of this money, this dedicated fund toward equity, how would you rate the state's job in distributing money and allocating it, both from a timing perspective and I guess the quality of what gets funded?
I would say CACF has an excellent relationship with the Department of State. They've been a wonderful partner in helping us build out programming, in helping us build out this contract details of what kind of programming would fit under anti-hate and bias work to be so expansive. It could be cultural programming. It could be, like I said, mental health and well-being programming. It could be multi-social services. So what DOS has done, Department of State has done with CACF, is create that programming and that structure, and they have been a wonderful partner. Now, would I say that we get our funding on time? I would say that's the hardest part here, and I think that's true of CBOs across the state that get funding from the state.
Sure.
But otherwise to that, I would say the Department of State has been a really good partner in our work.
Do any of your community organizations report having trouble accessing money? Because sometimes we'll find that it's only large organizations or groups that have historically worked with the state or in the past that know how to navigate the bureaucratic minefields, for example. Is that ever a problem in reality?
Yes, and so that is why through the equity budget, we've dedicated a small funding to our AAPI, that's Asian American Pacific Islander Community Development Fund. It's about over $500,000 that goes specifically to smaller organizations with a budget size that's $5 million or less. And it's because they can't access or don't have the support staff just yet to uptake a large state grant. So CACF works with these smaller CBOs to execute similar programming like an organization that would get bigger state dollars or a larger grant from the state, and help provide or work through that contracting process so that they feel more guidance, or they have more guidance, and they're able to have a dedicated fund to a program that they can execute using state dollars, which is amazing.
And geographically speaking, I have to imagine a lot of this money ends up in the New York City area, given just because there's 9 million people in New York City and a lot of minorities, a lot of immigrants. But do you find that some of this money makes its way to upstate communities, especially those upstate cities that have been known for, say, refugee resettlement or just a popular area for immigrants to settle?
Yes, absolutely. We actually have a reach across the state. So we serve more than 7 counties, including Rochester, Rockland, Saratoga, Tompkins, Westchester. And the Community Development Fund is targeted specifically to organizations in upstate. So we have organizations that serve the Capital Region, Finger Lakes, Mid-Hudson, on Long Island also, which is really important because it's outside of the New York City area. So while it might be easy to presume that a lot of our funding goes towards New York City, we are making grave efforts to expand outside of New York City because Asians live everywhere, which is amazing. Asians live everywhere. And I think that we want to make sure that whatever the need is per community, they're able to have access to funding. Particularly, for example, there's an organization in Buffalo called Buffalo String Works that works in literally teaching youth how to play instruments, violins, and there's a large Burmese community in Buffalo. And so the programming and funding that comes from the equity budget goes straight to programming for the Burmese community. It's done culturally responsively and also in language, which is really important. And right now, I was actually talking to Melinda, the executive director of Buffalo String Works, before I came here. We were talking about the fear the community feels in the presence of ICE right now, and how much Buffalo String Works, even though they're an organization that does wonderful programming for youth, and you might not think, oh, well, this organization I could go to this organization for support in other things. You can, because the Burmese community has trusted partners within the organization that look like them and are able to answer questions right now while community might be in fear.
Well, you brought up that issue of immigrants living in fear, potentially undocumented immigrants, and I'm curious if outside of the equity agenda, are you looking for any policy language at the state level that's designed to support New York's immigrant population or the undocumented population more specifically?
Yeah, we're really hoping that we can pass New York for All this year. I think something that we tend to forget, or just like if you're not so deeply rooted in politics or policy, you don't realize that actually only New York City is a sanctuary city.
Yeah, and for listeners who aren't familiar, this is legislation that governs formal and informal arrangements between local officials and federal immigration officials.
So it would mean that it would prevent the collaboration between NYPD and non-local law enforcement like ICE and other federal enforcement. Correct, exactly. So we are hoping that is passed this year. It looks like there might be a little bit of hope. I think Majority Leader did share that she supported.
Yeah, the Senate Majority Leader wants to support it, and we spoke with the Assembly sponsor recently, and they said they have 76 votes, and they said their threshold from the Speaker is 80. So
let's see. Hopefully that happens.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation. We've been speaking with Felicia Singh. They're the Director of Policy and Government Relations for the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families. Felicia, thanks for visiting us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Support for the Capitol Press Room comes from O'Donnell and Associates, a public affairs firm providing strategic guidance to businesses and nonprofits on navigating policy and regulatory issues. More information is available at o'donnellsolutions.com.